welcome to our services of lessons and carols here at Collegiate Wesley. Traditionally, this is our 11 o'clock service on Christmas Eve, and there's always a sense of anticipation as we wait together for Christmas Day to arrive, retelling and singing the story of Jesus' birth. So wherever you are today, whenever you're watching this, I hope that you'll join us in that sense of anticipation and hope and celebration. Our service this year was written by the Reverend Anna Bleyle and the Reverend M. Barclay of Enfleshed. You can find a lot of great resources on their website, enfleshed.com. We would love to connect with you after the holidays, and so I'm going to invite you now to take a few moments to fill out our connection card on our website. You can find a link to that directly in the comments if you're watching on Facebook and in the description if you're watching on YouTube. If you're on our website, you will find our check-in form, our connection card, right below this video. Let us pray. Spirit of love, we welcome you. We celebrate your coming to abide with us. And we remember the ways you have been faithfully companioning with us since the beginning. It was you who wove all life together. Your glory is painted across all of creation. Throughout history, over and over again, you have taken on flesh. In the ordinary and the extraordinary, in the vulnerability of infants, in the fierce proclamations of the prophets, the enduring hope of those who persevere under evil's threats. Where there is grief, where there is holy rage, where there is fear or sacred imagination growing, you abide across all the ages. Bless our time together as we remember the still unfolding story of your love, a love that comes to dwell among us, a love that surprises and disrupts, a love that reveals the way of liberation. May it be so among us. Amen.
I don't pay attention to the world ending. It has ended for me many times and began again in the morning. The hope of God is honest. It names forthrightly the struggles of our shared lives, the evils and suffering that make hope both difficult and necessary. It reaches to us in places bare and vulnerable, tender and tired. And hope says, hang on, keep on, press on with purpose. What feels impossible can become possible with God. As we light this candle, we reflect on the small ways hope has taken on flesh around us this year. A reading from Luke chapter 4, verses 16 through 21. When Jesus came to Nazareth, where he had grown up, he went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, as his regular practice. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him. Jesus unrolled the scroll and found where it was written, "The Spirit of God is upon me, because God has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. God has sent me to proclaim release to those held captive and restoration to those who are broken open, and let the oppressed go free, to proclaim liberation and jubilee." And Jesus rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of all in the synagogue were fixed on him. Then Jesus began to say to them, "Today your witness, this scripture, has been fulfilled."
Rejoice, rejoice in the
call upon the help of those who love you. These helpers take many forms: animal, element, bird, angel, saint, stone, or ancestor. Call your spirit back. It may be caught in corners and creases of shame, judgment, and human abuse. You must call in a way that your spirit will want to return. Speak to it as you would a beloved child. Welcome your spirit back from its wandering. It may return in pieces, in tatters. Gather them together. They will be happy to be found after being lost for so long. Your spirit will need to sleep a while after it's bathed and given clean clothes. Now you can have a party. Invite everyone you know who loves and supports you. Keep room for those who have no place to go. Make a giveaway. And remember, keep the speeches short. Then you must do this. Help the next person find their way through the dark. Peace is a gift of God that follows practicing care for each other and living with moral integrity. Prophets bear testimony to the barriers of peace among us. They chant faithfully in response to histories and present realities of racist violence. No justice, no peace. They echo the scriptures calling for justice and peace to rise and kiss. As we light this candle, we take a moment to reflect on an injustice that keeps people and communities from resting into the peace of God and calls us to deepen our engagement in the coming year. The wolf shall live in peace with the lamb. The leopard shall lie down with the newborn goat. The calf and the lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze. Their young shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. The nursing child shall play over the viper's nest, and the weaned child shall put her hand on the adder's den. They who can kill so easily will not hurt or destroy any life, for the earth will overflow with divine wisdom as the waters saturate the seas. If you suddenly and unexpectedly feel joy, don't hesitate. Give in to it. There are plenty of lives and whole towns destroyed or about to be. We are not wise and not very often kind, and much can never be redeemed. Still, life has some possibility left. Perhaps this is the way of fighting back, that sometimes something happens better than all the riches or power in the world. It could be anything, but very likely you notice it in the instant when love begins. Anyway, that's often the case. Anyway, whatever it is, don't be afraid of its plenty. Joy is not made to be a crumb. Joy does not keep us from getting grief or hide the world's pain away. It brings its own offering of delight, beauty, laughter, and sits them beside sorrow. Joy is the eternal abundance of small miracles that tether us to God's aliveness, even when death surrounds. As we light this candle of joy, we reflect on the source of plenty in our lives, the feast of holy abundance that sustains our spirits. A reading from Luke chapter 1, verses 39 through 45. In those days, Mary set out and went with haste to a Judean town in the hill country, where she entered the house of Zechariah and greeted Elizabeth. When Elizabeth heard Mary's greeting, the child leapt in her womb, and Elizabeth was filled with the Spirit and exclaimed with a loud cry, "Blessed are you, and blessed is the life of you who are bearing forth. And why is this happening to me? The mother of the Anointed One comes to me? For as soon as I heard the sound of your greeting, the child in my womb leapt for joy. And blessed is she who believes that the possibilities whispered by Spirit would come by."
Most importantly, love. Like it's the only thing you know how. At the end of the day, all of this means nothing. This page, where you're sitting, your degree, your job, the money, nothing else matters except love and human connection. Who you loved, and how deeply you loved them. How you touched the people around you, and how much you gave them. The greatest commandment, the one through which everything else must be interpreted. Love invites us, challenges us, changes us. Love is intimate, and love is collective. It seeks a world of flourishing within and without for all life. As we light this candle, we reflect on the barriers that keep us from living out our full capacity to love and celebrate the freedom God has given us to break down these barriers together. My soul magnifies God, and my spirit rejoices in our Creator. For God has looked with favor on me, one who has faced disrespect and degradation. Surely, from now on, all generations will call me blessed, for the divine has done great things through me, and holy is God's name. God's mercy is for those who know awe and joy from generation to generation. God's power has scattered the oppressed ones, perpetuating injustice. God has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. God has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. God has helped us, God's people, in remembrance of God's merciful promise, a promise made to our ancestors and extended to us and to those who will come after us forever.
Sweet little Jesus boy, they made you be born in a manger. Sweet little holy child, didn't know who you was, didn't know child, and we didn't know who you was.
And I said to him, "Are there questions to all of this?" And he said, "The answer is in a story, and the story is being told." And I said, "But there is so much pain." And she answered plainly, "Pain will happen." Then I said, "Will I ever find meaning?" And they said, "You will find meaning where you give meaning." The answer is in the story, and the story isn't finished. The incarnation of God comes to us in the most surprising of ways and places, unsettling the expectations of the powerful and breaking wide open the hopes of the weary. Salvation is born among us. As we light the Christ candle, we reflect on our own presumptions about God, the world, ourselves, and each other. And we open to the mysterious and scandalous way of love enfleshed. A reading from John chapter 1, verses 1 through 14. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was in God's presence, and the Word was God. The Word was present to God from the beginning. Through the Word, all things came into being, and apart from the Word, nothing that has come into being could have come into being. In the Word was life, and that life was humanity's light, a light that shines in the darkness, a light that darkness can never fully overcome. Then came one named John, sent as an envoy from God, who came as a witness to testify about the light, so that through his testimony others might come to know the light of life. He himself wasn't the light. He came to testify about the light which illumines humankind. The Word was coming into the world, was in the world. And though the world was made through the Word didn't recognize it. Though the Word came to its own realm, the Word's own people didn't accept it. Yet any who did accept the Word, who knew and believed, were empowered to become children of God. And the Word became flesh and came to dwell among us. We saw the Word's glory, the love a parent gives their child, full of grace and truth. Amen.
Holy John 1, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Upon the backdrop of deep night and sometimes utter darkness, the light of God is made available to us to see what we need to know, or what is miraculous, or what is being born in our lives. This Christmas Eve, it might do us all good to remember that darkness has come first for us in the origin of God's creation of the universe, when, in a burst, the stars and planets and galaxies spun into being. In the womb, where each of us was fashioned in mystery and grace. In the hours when the sun sinks beneath the horizon and we dream dreams as we sleep. And sometimes in the unconscious of our minds, where things are stored that we do not remember all the time, until there might be a moment, a smell, a gesture, a thought, a smile, and it's like turning a flashlight on into that darkness and we see what has been held there for us. Perhaps it was held until we were ready, perhaps until we need to remember. When Jesus comes, he is like a light for us to see into the mysteries and hidden things of the darkness. He is like the hidden sun shining on the stars and moon at night so we can see that we are not all of creation. He is like the blink that happens when a baby is born and suddenly out from the womb there is shape and form visible now in the light. Light that gives us understanding to see into the dark and glean its meaning for us. The darkness holds things for us, and with light we can look and see just a little bit what those things are. Things the story of Jesus tells us, like grace and forgiveness and hope and growth. We know that the miracle of life takes both the deep darkness of the soil and the warm light of the sun. We are like that. When I was a teenager, I lived along the Pacific coast where at certain times of the year the grunion would show up. Now grunion are little fish about the size of minnows, and they spawn on the beaches of Southern California. My brothers and I, with some of our friends, would go down to the beach in the middle of the night and wait to see if the grunion would come in. You never knew for sure what night they would ride the waves onto the beach. As they would send just a few scouts out, you would see 1 or 2 or 3 of these little fish riding the waves in the surf. And that might happen for several nights. We would go down with other watchers, and some of those people would have buckets to collect the grunion to eat. We would all be there and we would be waiting. We would sometimes light a fire further up on the beach where we would wait, and then we would periodically go down to the shoreline to see if we could see anything. Could we see any scouts? And then, seemingly without warning, hundreds and thousands of these little silver fish would come crashing onto the beach under the moonlight and wiggling their way up onto the sand. It was like watching thousands of stars fall over the dark, wet sand. Sometimes hoping for light, personal and collective, is like waiting for the grunion to run. You live expectantly, you live knowing that this will happen, but you do not necessarily control when it will happen. Maybe you see a scout of the light, a glimmer of it, but when the light fully comes, it is like 1,000 stars swimming around you. As we awaken to the light, we begin in the deepest parts of our souls to expect it, to search it out from all the darkness. When we see it, we remember it as happening as something beyond our decisions, a moment of inspiration, a visiting of inspiration, a clarity where before it was murky and confusing, a little bit of wonder and hope, like seeing thousands of those grunion return to the beach in the dark of night under a moonlit sky. Some of the darkness in the Testament of John talks about, in its opening lines, that fear and hopelessness that sometimes we feel. And surely these are great problems of life. They collude to steal our spirits and stuff out our life breath. We overcome these not by will and not by determination. We overcome that by watching for the light, loving it in a way that we tend to it as we tend to other things we care about. Because we know it will help us see what the darkness has for us. It will help us grow. It will help us dream the dreams that God has for us. Karl Hammerslag one time said, "Most of us don't become what we can be because we can't see. It's what we already are." Light, God's creative, healing light, the light that welcomes in the birth of Jesus, that this Christmas Eve is about that, which lets us see what we already are. Loved, given grace, forgiven, cherished. We are given the light so we can know it and we can testify to it by awakening others, being a bit of light for others. Edgar Kahn, he ran a program for people that he thought were being displaced by society and put on the old scrap heap. The elderly, minorities, teenagers, single people raising children, disabled adults, LGBTQI people. And he put together this program where people could do stuff with people who needed stuff doing. It was totally voluntary and it was totally successful. And he wrote this poem about it. He said, "All we have in the here and now is our love for each other, our willingness to forgive each other, and our willingness to come to each other's rescue." I think that's probably true for all of us. It is true for the world that is trying to remember who it is in the mind of God, trying so hard to remember it's God's beloved, trying so hard to remember how to fall in love with the wonder of light and nurture and forgiveness. May this season let the light wash over us like the shimmer of the grunion running on the Pacific beaches. May it come with mercy, peace, and hope like a million stars set upon the great dark of the heavenly sky. Silent night. precious life. And into the sacred darkness of this holy night, may our hearts be vulnerable to beauty and to the pain of each other. May our minds be open to truth and questioning injustice, and may our hearts and lives be centered in what is true and liberating and life-giving, so that each and every life and everything that births love may be nourished and flourish with the assurance of God's abiding presence. Go with peace and joy. Merry Christmas.